Yes, and then, well, the last slide, it's just one of his favorite phrases, which would be that people can't get out of their boxes to stand and look at their own prejudices. The subjects on refugees and immigrants. And now I will hand over to our presenter, which is Noureddine Erradi, and yeah, I will give him a big thank you for being the first presenter of our webinars in Spain, and thank him a lot.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm really very pleased to be with you to talk to you and share with you my proper experience with refugees from within. Of course, I have to thank SIETAR Spain for this opportunity and giving me this opportunity to share, as I said, with you and to talk about this subject, which is which makes let's say a lot of people talk about it, and a lot of people would like to know more about the situations of refugees, especially refugees who come to Europe. If you allow me, I would like to take to have this introduction, this short introduction with you, just to put into a kind of a frame some facts or some numbers, something we have to know. I mean, we have to know all together to understand a little bit what's going on or what has happened to have this crisis of refugees in Europe. In 2015, there were mainly 1 million refugees coming to Europe, or came to Europe from different countries. And this huge and fast increase was because of some reasons, or the following reasons. First, that is, for these refugees, it was a kind of less hope, no political solutions, no light, let's say, at the end of the tunnel. The second reason was that they were living in conditions in the frontiers countries. I mean, their living conditions are very deteriorating. To give you an idea, that 87% of the Syrians in Jordan and 93% of the Syrians in Lebanon, to start with, were living below the national poverty lines. This is very important to know. And besides, only half of the children, imagine, go to school, which means that people are living very badly. Then we have this trigger. What the real causes of this crisis? This happens when all of a sudden, if you remember, the international aid decreased the World Food Program. And this World Food Program was forced, I mean, for lack of resources, as I said, to cut by 30% food of resources, the food support to the Syrian refugees. So, in this case, the refugees, they feel that they are totally, I mean, dependent on international support. So they are not allowed to work. They are not allowed to do many things within the camp where they were. So the first feeling is they felt that the world is abandoning them. And this was one of the main triggers that push the refugees to flee, I mean, to leave these refugee camps in Lebanon and in Jordan. And all of a sudden, of course, as we said, people started to move in large numbers. And then all of a sudden, what happened in Europe is that Europe looked unprepared because Europe is divided. And that's how it started. That's how we people in Europe are looking at the problem from outside.
Noureddine.
Yes.
Can you turn on your camera so that we can see you?
It is turned on.
I can't see you anymore.
I can see you, and the camera is on.
Yes.
That's strange.
I can see you.
No?
No.
That's strange.
I could before, but since we've started, I cannot.
So maybe it will come. It will come back because it is on me. On my computer, it is on.
Okay.
I see the light. So.
Okay.
Can
Sorry.
Can I go on to? Okay.
Yes. Let's go on.
My 5 minutes are now, because it is very important to mention this point, especially actually when this flood of refugees started. What happened is that we found out that Europe, I mean, really looked unprepared because Europe was divided. So, and when you are divided, you do not want to recognize the reality, and that is first. That is a fact. Also, you postpone decisions because you do not have the capacity to make them. And if we are in this situation, and even when the situation was getting worse, Europe was unable to put in place a mechanism to manage this situation. So that is just to give you, I mean, a picture, an idea to see what's going on. That's why when people watch the refugees coming on televisions, I mean, no borders, no frontiers, nothing. Say, oh my God, what's going on here? No control. So people, of course, they are afraid. And what I'm trying now to sketch is to make a little bit things clearer to understand what's going on and what has happened so far. And if we are talking about 1 million people, it looks enormous. But in fact, if you look at the population in Europe, it is 550 million, 550 million people. And we are talking about 1 million refugee. I mean, 1 million refugee means 1 refugee per every 2,000 European. In Lebanon, for example, we have 1 refugee per 3 Lebanese. So imagine what we are talking about. So people start wondering and asking questions like how many people Europe can take. And then to me, it is actually that is a rhetorical question. That is a question you cannot answer. Why? Because refugees have the right to be protected. So those things and those facts should be taken into considerations. So at the beginning, for example, of the crisis in Syria, Turkey said at that time that they were able to, for example, to receive up to 100,000 refugees. Turkey has now almost 3 million. So in Europe, I mean, they were able to to come together in solidarity to create an adequate reception capacity of entry points. And that was the big problem, because there were no checks, no organization at the entry points. That's why we have this chaos and we have this disorder and disorganization of the coming of refugees to Europe. And if Europe did have these entry points well organized, I mean, means for that the countries at the entry points need, of course, to be massively supported. And the screening people with security checks, distributing the refugees according to the possibilities of each country, then this way things will be looked differently and the situation can be much better. I just wanted to mention, to talk about this small, for me, the little points, but they are huge and they are very important. That's why I wanted to introduce them to you, to understand a little bit what's going on. I think because of the time, I have to now to move to my experience and my work in the Netherlands, and to put you a little bit in my world of work. When I finished my studies in Paris, Sorbonne, I studied psychology and literature of the Black American writers. I went to live in the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands, I was asked to work with newcomers, refugees. And at that time, I was asked to help refugees. If you remember, 2003, 2004, the Iraqis who were in prison, in the prison of Saudi Arabia. And imagine that was a terrible situation. I mean, they were tortured, they were tired, they were feeling the worst, and they have been through the worst. And that was my first contact with refugees at that time. And the Dutch government asked me to teach them some social skills, actually how to make them, try to help them to find their place in the Dutch society. But these refugees I used to have were not prepared to follow these courses, because they were in need to somebody or some people to listen to them. And here I would like to emphasize on this point, because in this field of refugees, if you find ourselves working, helping, trying to do something to help refugees, I think listening will turn to be an art. And if I say that, I really mean what I'm saying. Because when I used to talk with them, most of the time they ask me that I like first to talk to somebody who understands the language, since I do speak Arabic. And most of the time they emphasize on the fact that they are happy because I do listen and I want to listen. There is listening, and also you have to give the feeling that you want to listen to them, and it helped me a lot. So that was my first contact with refugees and also with immigrants. And of course, as you know, there's a big difference between the two target groups. And I was coordinating a European project, making creating ideas for my colleagues, because to me I was lucky, because I was in the middle, like a bridge. I was working with refugees and immigrants, and at the same time working with my colleagues, the teachers, the trainers, the coordinators. And at that time I realized that there was something missing there was something missing in the communication. You have teachers who have a lot of experience in teaching, for example, Dutch as a second language. They know what they do. But when it comes to work with people from other culture, I realized that there was something called, I mean, a barrier, because they don't happen to know more about the culture of people coming from other countries, from other cultures, people who have suffered actually wars. They were actually rejected. They were um, suffering, feeling pain, and all this trauma. So that was not easy to deal with all these things. My colleagues, most of the time, they said, "Well, I'm here to teach, and I have to do what I have to do, and that's it." From there, I decided to come up, created this concept to help my colleagues by taking them to a non-European environment and ask them to follow the same integration program they did in the Netherlands. So I took them to Morocco, I took them to Turkey, and they had to follow this integration program in the Turkish language and or in the Arabic language. And the idea here is to have, the idea is not to learn the language, but to feel, to experience, to know what it is to be in the shoes of an immigrant or a refugee. And with this concept, while actually working with the participant, with my colleagues, let's say with the Europeans, I also follow them with the camera. And what's interesting in this concept is that you give them this possibility to get out of their own boxes, our gardens, our houses, to look at their own ways of teaching, looking how they teach, how they behave, how they they happen to look at their own prejudices, and from there they start correcting things, changing things, and that's why I am very happy with this program, because so far we have made 6 or 7 documentaries who have been awarded, and now these tools are used in more than 800 European organizations. Why? Because we do have the natives, the people who work with immigrants and refugees, who discover something, and they are very happy to discover that. They were very happy to know, to realize that that working with people from other cultures sometimes differ from how we think we do things. So that was really a very fruitful, rich experience, and I am very happy that my colleagues and many policymakers, especially in the Scandinavian countries, have taken in working with this concept, because especially for the future teachers and the trainers and coaches who are going to work with immigrants and with refugees. And to make a parallel link, to pass, I think, to pass immediately to what happened after I left my work in the Netherlands. I found myself in Belgium, in Brussels, where I've been through a very, let's say, interesting experience. I have learned a lot from it. I am still learning, because I am still working in this refugee camp in Brussels. And in this refugee camp in Brussels, I was asked to help refugees from Syria, from Iraq, from Afghanistan, from Somalia, from many other countries, and to help them. I mean, my task is to be an interpreter, especially for the doctors of the world. And there I found another world. There I found, let's say, I touched the hidden things, the things that we should know, because being an interpreter is is one thing, and doing your job as interpreter, especially if you do speak, if you are a native, for example, if you do speak the language of the refugees, in this case, the Syrians, the Iraqis, Somalis, and for example, from Afghans, it is a hard thing to do. But I'm sharing with you that, I mean, these are facts. Because when I was working as an interpreter, by the way, working as interpreter in a refugee camp, to me, it was not the only thing I was doing, because if you happen to find yourself in a refugee camp, believe me, you will do many tasks. Means you have to be skillful, and you have to do whatever. You have to be in the kitchen. You have to help people with clothes. You have to give toys to children. You have to teach children. You have to listen to parents. You have, anyway. That is, you find yourself in front of refugees, human beings like you are. So you just need, I mean, to help. So what has happened in this refugee camp? As an interpreter, I found, as I said before, I found myself in a situation where my job cannot be easy, but I forced myself to do what I had to do. Because as an interpreter, in the eyes of the refugees, as someone who speaks the language, they wanted, as I said, they came to the doctor because they have pain, because they are sick, because they need medicine, because. And while doing this, I found myself confronting two situations. The first situation, we really should have a real, it's a rich luggage of language, because I am dealing with terms, vocabulary that have to do with medical terms, which means that I have to know what I'm talking about, what I'm interpreting, and to translate the right term or description of the illness or whatever to the doctor. And then I have to translate or interpret what the doctor tells me to the patient. And here we are dealing sometimes with many, mentalities, ways of looking at things. You have a man with his wife, and he wants his wife to be, to be checked in by a woman or whatever. Anyway, we went through many situations. That's why I had to fit in every situation, like in a puzzle, in a box. That's part of the job. And the second thing, when you translate, when you try to gain this confidence of the patient, at that time, the patient, she or he, feels that he is in need to talk, and then for the doctor, we can't do that, because the doctor has to do his job or her job, because there are other patients awaiting. So you find yourself in a situation where first I do my job, I interpret, and then sometimes I have to take some of my time to tell them, okay, I would like to listen to you, to talk to you after my work. Again, talking about the refugees, we sometimes think that, we are afraid of them, but if we happen to be closer a bit to what they have been through and how they are thinking about their dilemma, their drama, sometimes I found myself, in a surprising position when, I give you an example, listening to a lady who came with her daughter. Her daughter was 10 years old. Her daughter was having pain. And while the doctor was asking me to explain to her what she has to do. She was full of smiles. She was just smiling and smiling to every answer I was giving her. And when we finished, I just did ask her, "Excuse me, would you tell me why? For example, why are you smiling? Because I know that you have been through many things." So then she looked at me and she said, "What do you want me to do? I came from Halab, that is one of historic city. She's ruined." And she told me she lost everything. She lost her house, she lost her husband, she lost her 3 children, and she fled just with her daughter. So when you find yourself in front of this situation, so sometimes it's difficult. You don't know what to do. And I felt that she was stronger than me when she was telling me that story, because I turned to be emotional because we are human beings, but for her, she said, "I have to face the future and I have to be stronger, because otherwise I will not, I cannot allow myself, um, I mean, to pass away or to die and leave my daughter alone." So that is just an example of these little stories. There is also another thing I would like to add to these experiences is we have really to be aware that the majority of refugees, let's say half of them, are children. And what we have to put in mind as Europeans is to do something especially for this future generation, because this generation, they do need education. They do need a lot. Why? Because they are the future. Because I talked to many of the parents and mothers and fathers, and they said that is their hope, these children, because they do need education in Europe. They do need to be engineers, architects, doctors, electricians, technicians, to go back to their country and to rebuild the country. And the country do need them. Means this is that is an enormous chance for Europe in this case to do what it should be done, especially the education of this target group, because they are part. Europe is also part of it in the future. Europe is part of it. What will happen to these refugees to go back to their countries? If they don't happen to get this opportunity of being educated, given all the necessary tools, I think we will be facing, a catastrophe in the future. Maybe a lot of Syrians or, Iraqis will not fit in the system, and then they will turn into, let's say, negative products, if I might use this term. So we don't have many choices. And what I'm talking about is this education matter is crucial. It's very important. If we cannot help, these people to have this education, I think it is a biggest mistake not to do it, because they are ready to do it, because they are ready to learn, because they know that the future is rebuilding again their countries. Am I still in time, or?
Yes, we have 20 minutes left.
We have 20 minutes.
But until now, I think there are not many questions, at least in the chat. No one has written any questions so far. So if you have any questions, please write them in the chat so my colleague Sylvia can collect them and we can answer them at the end. Okay, go on already.
Okay.
And we can still see you. So I don't know what's the problem with the camera.
I really, this happens. It happens from time to time. I don't know why, but
okay.
Really don't know why.
No worries.
So I will go on by sketching give another example by saying that we should put in mind that half of the Syrians population is now uprooted. Can you imagine? Half of the Syrian population is uprooted, and then 6.5, let's say 6.5 million people have fled for their lives, and then let's say 3 million, according to the commissioner, 3 million have found a sanctuary in the neighboring countries, and only a small proportion have moved. Let's say again have moved to Europe. And as I said before, half of Syrian refugees are children, and I was talking about this. I mean, this group of children, they who do need this education. Unfortunately, we have 20% of the Syrian children are in schools in Lebanon. Just 20%, and that's not much. And these refugees, as I said, they fled. They ruined houses, schools, roads, and their children want education to forget, let's say, the past and to think about the future. And again, because they want to be the engineers, the architects, the electricians, the teachers, to rebuild our countries. That's why this society in exile, let's say, can do it if it is given actually the human tools. And again, the refugee, they just need a place of learning, of healing. Of opportunities to feel that they do exist. So that is what I have heard. That's what I have been through. That is what I learned from the majority of refugees I have worked with. I talked to, I listened to, and again, they really want to be integrated in the European society. Most of them, they don't like let's say, the way some countries or some Europeans look at them, and they just said that they do want to have this chance to show that they want to integrate, that they have actually they have the tools, they are rich, they are also intellectuals, and they could participate. They can do something with the richness and let's say the tools they have brought with them to do something with it in Europe, and with these tools also they can help their children if they were given let's say the right tools in the European society to help their children, to help also European, to help them rebuild their future. So those are specific things I want really to stress on. And here again, I would like to go back to the last, let's say, to the last point, which is the important, the crucial work of an interpreter. And I really, I find this very, very important, very crucial, because this work of an interpreter can solve and can help and can actually find answers to many, 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 many problems and answers to many unsolved questions. Why it is crucial, the work of an interpreter? Because he is the bridge. Sometimes he turns to be, let's say, the light in that tunnel I told you about. And the function of the, let's say, of the interpreter is overcoming the barrier of the language. As we know, the majority of the refugees, they do have this lack of speaking the language of the country where they arrive. The interpreter can also, I mean, protecting and somebody seeking durable solutions for refugees, and to perform efficiently and professionally and ethically as an interpreter. I mean, the interpreter, I mean, one needs to be aware of the purpose and content of his or her work. That's crucial. That's very important. Because the task of an interpreter in a refugee interview, for example, context, is challenging in any circumstances anyway. The conditions of the work may be difficult, can be tough. People can expect from you what you cannot and possibly should not give them. And that is one of the experience I've had when I started doing this job as an interpreter. I forced myself really to stick to this file of conduct, of this code of conduct. I have to respect it, and I have really to stick and to be aware that sometimes, as I said, that people can, I mean, expect from me what I can't and possibly shouldn't give them. So imagine when you find yourself in a situation where you cannot say no, or in a situation where you cannot say yes. Also, the interpreter should also realize that being aware of these obstacles, I mean, to her work, is the first step, of course, towards overcoming these obstacles or these problems. As I've always said, that your own values might conflict with your code of conduct, and that is what I have been through myself. I mean, yeah, my own values, as I said, may have this conflict with the code of conduct imposed. And to give you, for example, talking about this code of conduct, what they address, for example, the need of to be impartial and neutral. You have to be confidential. You have to be competent. You have to be transparent. You have actually to have an accuracy in translation, and also you should, draw your boundaries. So imagine if you happen to work with refugees, people suffering, having problems, are in need to talk to you, and then you find yourself that you have to stick to this code of conduct. That is also something, that's my advice to the interpreters to stick to learn and to know, because it's not easy, and we are not machines, we are human beings, but you have to do, we say, sometimes you have to do your job. So that's why the circumstances sometimes in which I found myself well, have made it, I mean, difficult for me to take decisions, as I said, according to this code.
Okay.
There is, I think, one last thing I would like to add about this, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Just a factor which is important, which is, I mean, the interpreters, I mean, age and gender, social status, political and religious orientation, they play a huge role in the interview's dynamics. We should be aware of this. And they can have a negative or positive effect on let's say, the quality of communication through translation. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Noureddine. So we are now going over to questions and answers. I'm going to now turn off the sharing of the screen so that I can collect your questions from the chat. And yeah, you can still see me. And we'll do that now.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see the questions. Okay, I can't. I know that there are some. Okay, now I can. So, first one from David Kaler. He's asking, how did you fund the Netherlands Teachers Experimental Program? How did you convince the funders and teacher organizations? In Canada, there are many Canadians who are independent sponsors of refugees. What can be done to get them out of their boxes? Which boxes are the biggest obstacles?
Okay, I will try with the first question. How have I actually convinced my organization, my director at that time, to fund the project I was talking about? Well, I explained to him what the problem was between the teachers and the students, let's say the immigrants and the refugees. I explained to him that to solve this problem, we have to help my colleagues to go through a similar experience, a similar experience, and to put them, to put them let's make them walk in the shoes of these immigrants and let them themselves find out what the problems they do have with themselves and with the students. Maybe I can say I was lucky because my boss at that time said he liked the concept, he liked the idea, and he was ready to finance the project. And the first project was to Morocco. And I took 12, let's say, teachers of Dutch as a second language. Among them, there were psychologists and journalists and policymakers. And we made the first documentary. And to our surprises, this documentary was introduced, presented in the Netherlands, and it was a big hit, big success. And because of that success, that I succeeded to have funding from the European Commission to fund other projects with many European countries who participated with their teachers as a second language.
Okay, I can see that he also asked if the documentaries are in English and how to access them.
Yes, the documentaries are also in English, and the people who are interested, they can. I can give you the link, which is I don't know if we
We're
write
having
it on.
trouble now. Can you send it through the chat?
Yes.
Thank you, that's great.
And it's easy, you know, www newcomers in Turkey.
Newcomers
in Turkey.
in Turkey.
.com.
Okay.
And there you can have some fragment from the movies, and if you are interested, I mean, you can have my email. I have it, by the way, because the email has changed, and we have to write my email. And in case people do have questions or interest in something, they can use my email. I will send you in here.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Noureddine.
You're welcome. And then I will turn to the second question concerning the question from, I think, from Canada. I am trying to follow the question.
I think this is the one you've just answered. I see that there is one from Eleanor Silver, and she's saying, I work as an intercultural trainer and teach English to non-English speaking children in a UK school. I've been invited to do intercultural training for refugees in the southwest of the UK. I've been working principally with foreign students and voluntary migrants, but have not worked with refugees before. The organizer of this project, with his many aspects, is himself a refugee who has been here for 17 years. So he is a great source of information. One of the things he mentioned to me was that the different refugee groups tend to mix little with each other at the moment. I'm conscious that whilst the majority of my previous participants have come to this country voluntarily, the refugees are not here necessarily by choice, and I'm aware of the trauma and acculturation stress they may be suffering. So I'm hoping the intercultural sessions will help them. What advice could you give me?
Of course, I mean the intercultural sessions are always, of course, helpful. That is a very good question, because but I mean, when you have these intercultural sessions, I think the best advice I can give, I have been through it myself, is that to put myself in it, to put myself in the situation of refugees, to meet, to listen to refugees, and to be helped, especially if you have refugees who have been living in the country for many years. They can be a very helpful source. They can sometimes give you some tips, because if we are talking about refugees here, I'll give you an example. Where I was working with Syrians, believe me, I thought that I can communicate with them in Arabic, sometimes in dialect, but I found out that there are many different dialects I could not understand, even in Arabic, let alone for somebody who doesn't speak Arabic. So if you let yourself, I mean, that's not getting out of the box, but I mean, you let yourself and be with them and observe and especially listen, I am sure that you will gain a huge amount of knowledge and experience, because it is needed. And as you said, I agree, because it's not, sometimes it's not easy when a group of people come together, which means they look for union, they look for solidarity, they look for, I mean, nobody can come in between to disturb maybe their silence or their peace, but it's not the case. They just want to feel that they do exist, and the moment they gain your confidence, and then they are open to you. And another point I'm emphasizing on which is very, very important, is listening. Believe me, in this stage, it is an art.
Okay, I see that there are no more questions. Okay, one moment. Sylvia has one. Which is your worst moment as an interpreter, and how did you solve it?
Yeah, it is a very good question. The the worst moment was um, with the lady I mentioned. I mean, the lady from Syria with her daughter, and I don't know if I solved it. It was terrible. It was emotional. It was, I mean, a humane situation, and solve it. I found myself solving it by just listening and nodding, because her answer, what she said about the death of her family and the loss of her house and everything, with a smile, is powerful. I mean, to me, it was a contrast. You can't understand, but I have to hold myself and try to really do my job and understand what she was telling, because that was, again, that was powerful. And I think I did solve the situation by listening and be me, to show her that we are human beings and we are not machines. Especially though, well, we have to avoid this. I mean, don't let the other think that you are, I mean, you are acting like a machine in a format that this is 1 + 1 is 2. I mean, you can always do it otherwise. Stick to your job, do your job, but after all, we are all humans.
Okay, I think that was a very great webinar. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank everyone else for joining as well, for being part of the first SIETAR Spain webinar. I hope that we will see you for many else this year. If you have any more questions, you have Nouredine's email in the chat, or you can contact us at any time by email, Facebook, LinkedIn, or whatever. I hope you have all a nice evening, morning, or day, whichever time zone you are in. And hope to see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.